Hello everyone, I'm Kevin, otherwise known as Forum BX257, here to bring you another 1980s GI Joe review. But today I'm going to be taking a look at my first 1990s GI Joe, the GI Joe Concealment Specialist, the 1990 Ambush. Now, Ambush makes his first comic book appearance in the old Marvel comic run of GI Joe in issue number 111. However, that's more like a cameo. He makes a proper full appearance in the following issue. As a matter of fact, he's actually named in that following issue. He makes his first cartoon appearance in the Deke animated series, the Season 1, Episode 1, titled United We Stand. One interesting thing you'll note about Ambush, on his card art, he's very mature looking, very grizzled, if you will. As a matter of fact, the action figure itself is quite the same. However, if you take a look at his file card, you'll notice that he has a pay grade of E3, which roughly translates to an army rank of private, which is actually very low in the pantheon of GI Joe ranks. Most ranks are that of E4, or a corporal or specialist. So he's actually one of the very few privates in the entire GI Joe line. As a matter of fact, his paragraph denoting his personality actually refers to his childhood and his early recruitment into the army, making me wonder whether the story for his file card was actually meant to be for a much younger action figure than it wound up being attached to. Ambush comes with a lot of great, but also extremely fragile accessories. As a matter of fact, even though Ambush is kind of a common figure to find on the aftermarket, you will find it very hard to find one with all his accessories and his accessories in unbroken condition. Let's take a look at his cape first. As a matter of fact, I'll have to get the figure out of the way just to show you the proper profile of this thing, with its purposely ragged edges and the hole in the middle just for his head to fit through. This is extremely thin material. I can imagine a lot of kids just sort of ripped this thing right in half as soon as they started to play with it. It just sort of fits on the figure like this, as I guess a kind of a primitive ghillie suit. Just sort of sits on the figure like a poncho though. Next we'll take a look at his rifle. And that's all this thing is called on the contents list of the cards. It's called rifle. Unfortunately, it's not very explicit as to what this thing is, but to me this thing looks like an SA-80, sort of the forerunner to the British Standard Army rifle, the L-85. The difference is being that the SA-80 is longer and thinner like this, and this has the straight magazine, whereas the L-85 would have the curved NATO Standard magazine. And of course we have a nice SUSAT scope, which is something that you'll find on both the SA-80 and the L-85. Ambush comes with a helmet. It has a rather strange texture to it, unfortunately. It's not very distinctly molded. I'm assuming that this is some type of a netting or just some sort of a camouflage plastered on. Attached to the bottom of his backpack, we have a grenade launcher. I'm assuming this is just some type of a one-shot grenade launcher, kind of like a pistol version of the M203 maybe. Some interesting detail is that on his bandolier, as well as on his leg, you can see that he does in fact have grenade shells on here. The propelled grenade shells, like 40 millimeters. So that's a nice type of a accompaniment to this. One of my pet peeves, of course, is figures coming with machine guns but no ammunition. And here we have something that actually goes with the figure. And attached to his backpack we have parts to his lean-to. A couple of tent poles, which I'll go into a bit later, as well as the tent cover. And the backpack itself. It's not explicitly stated on the card how to actually put the 10 poles in here, or in fact whether or not to put the grenade launcher in these strange clips on the bottom, but that's generally how collectors do it. The lean-to consists of 4 of these 10 poles. I've just connected the 2 together. They would have originally come all separate, but I connected them at the hinge. And there's also this tent throw cover, which is the same material as the cape, except this is just one big square. Now you connect the 10 poles together using the outward peg, clip it onto the hook, and this part just scissors out to make the entrance, and this part just sort of leans outwards to make the back portion of the tent frame. And there you go. You just drape the tent over like that, and you can place your figure inside. Taking the tent poles apart just for storage is a kind of a risky venture, and something that honestly it's hard for me to recommend, even though it is kind of cool just to store this stuff back onto his backpack. But there's a lot of pressure points and fail points as a result for these tent poles. Just like the mushroom pegs holding this together, which makes the hinge, and the hook, and even this peg. It's all often broken off. And like I said before, it's not clearly stated how the poles are supposed to be connected onto the backpack, but this is just the way that I normally do it. I just put them on like this, and then like this. And the reason why I'm doing this in a particular order, even though it doesn't really clip in very well, the fact of the matter is that these little nubs on the poles themselves, which I think are originally there to catch the material of the tent throw cover, just so it holds on a bit better and just doesn't just slide right off. They actually bang up against these sticks here, so it doesn't really move all that well in a side-to-side direction, but just lifting it off pulls it right off fairly easily. One interesting thing is, if you look at his boots here, his boots actually kind of stop here, but they've decided to paint it all the way up. And they painted it over his socks, or his gaiters, which I believe were supposed to be the same color as the lower parts of his arms, the sort of inner sweater or whatever he's wearing. That's rather unfortunate. And we'll take a look at his mutton chop / mustache thing. I'll have to admit, this really reminds me of like a 19th century British Army trooper. As a matter of fact, it really goes well with his British rifle, making me wonder whether this was a sort of a lost theme on Hasbro's designers' part. For a concealment specialist, Ambush comes with a lot of heavy weaponry, such as a very large rifle and a grenade launcher. So a lot of collectors agree that he is a perfect rival to the range vipers, the Cobra Wilderness Troopers, who themselves come with a lot of heavy weaponry, like this grenade launcher and a mortar launcher, which I don't have here, just to counter ambush. As a matter of fact, even Deke Animation agreed and created an episode called I Found You, Eevee, which is basically ambush versus a longtime rival who turned into a range viper later in life. This is actually one of the best Deke animated episodes in their entire run. Unfortunately, Ambush is in that hidden gem category of action figures because his character isn't all that memorable. He was really only featured in one GI Joe comic, and he was amongst a whole bunch of other characters at the same time. He just didn't stand out very well. On top of that, his cartoon appearances were in the Deke animated series, and a lot of people tend to think of that series of cartoons as very, very childish. Unfortunately, they also associate the action figures as being childish as well, and I would say a great many of them are not. Ambush is certainly not a very childish looking figure. He's well equipped. One of his prominent accessories, the lean-to tent, looks great fully assembled and fits the figure really well considering it folds up onto his backpack. On top of that, if you don't like his very prominent tan camouflage, just put his cape onto him and he has a very prominent green camouflage as a result. Unfortunately, his accessories are very fragile, meaning that it's hard to find this figure complete on the aftermarket, and that sort of limits how you view this figure if you just see him in a lot of other action figures. However, if you really do like the aesthetics of this figure, in 2000, for the GI Joe A Real American Hero Collection series, they made a sidetrack figure, which is basically the Ambush figure redone in green, and with all his accessories, done in other colors of course, but he came with the lean-to, all the tent poles, as well as the cape and the tent throw. Plus, Sidetrack came with instructions on not only how to assemble the lean-to tent, but how to store it back on his backpack, something that was missing from the Ambush figure. In this case, they actually say to roll up the tent cover and put it into the curved slots underneath the backpack, which is where most people put the grenade launcher. To be quite honest, it fits the grenade launcher a bit better. Well, that's all the time I have right now. Please check out my Facebook page for more information and behind-the-scenes photos for these reviews. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for next time to see another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. See you then.